Welcome to Charts Today. It is Monday, the 15th of June. I'm back in London after a week in Germany training clients, the European Energy Exchange. And what a start to the week it is. It's hard to know where to start. First of all, this is a look at the SpaceX chart. Of course, we only have 1 minute data. I had lots of people asking me, what's my view on SpaceX? I said, I'm a technical analyst. Without the history, I'm useless. And now we've got the 1 minute chart. This will be fascinating just watching this build. And of course, the targets, interestingly, we saw an upside target given and met, downside target, little mini upside target. The thrills and spills of watching the 1 minute chart in SpaceX is going to be fantastic over the next few days. And I've also covered that already in TradingView this morning. So if you want to follow me there, do follow me there, and you'll find my charts today. And I'll put the link in today's morning call, so you can watch that there on TradingView. So if you're literally looking at the charts in TradingView or Update, the choice is yours. You can have the targets in either. So really quite key there that we're seeing that SpaceX chart, and if we look at the 60-minute chart of SpaceX, of course, all we have is a handful of candles. So watch that 1 minute chart today. That's going to be really interesting. But of course, the big news is what's been happening in the Middle East. We're seeing oil prices down 5%, 6% on WTI. We've already put call out to clients. We were neutral. This is to our energy clients. We were neutral on some products, but we were bearish on crude oil and oil last week. So we're seeing that coming to play now. We're looking at $80 for WTI and 83 for Brent crude. So really quite key downside targets there. Really bearish for the energy mix, as you might expect, and that is, of course, bullish for a lot of other things, markets especially. So we start by looking at the dollar index. We have got still this unactivated upside target. The key thing about the dollar index is this sideways trend is pretty tight and can't go on forever. We are looking for signs of which way we're going to break, but it's really not showing itself at the moment. We've seen the Japanese yen. We're seeing some respite for Japan. That's intervention from the Bank of Japan. If we look at the 60-minute chart, we saw quite strong intervention on Thursday, pushing that yen back below that 160 level. That's the real sort of concerning level for the Bank of Japan. And if we look at bond yields in Japan, we are seeing some respite there with some downside targets on the daily chart. We're waiting to see if we activate a downside target. This news that the oil price is now lower, this energy was having a really big effect for Japan, and this was a concern for global markets, and the fact we're seeing potentially a move back is potentially good news. And bond yields just generally liking the news that we're seeing coming out of the Middle East. So looking at Bitcoin, this is the medium-term chart for Bitcoin. We did touch new lows in the last week or so that's not good news on the 60-minute chart. If we look at the daily chart, the 60-minute chart, we do have upside targets for Bitcoin, but boy, we'd be a brave person when we're below the cloud on that daily chart. Looking at the Nasdaq, that was strong on Friday. SpaceX obviously having a huge effect, but we are still below the cloud on the 60-minute chart, and the same for the S&P. We said we need to make a new high. We did have targets coming off the bottom there. That thrust move produced that target, and those targets met on the 60-minute chart. And if we look at the Nasdaq future, we're up 2% this morning. So it does suggest that US markets are going to open higher in line with what we're seeing in Europe. We've got the UK market up 0.8% upside target there on the FTSE future, and looking at the DAX in Germany, 1.7% higher. And if we look at that's the cash, that's the future. The cash market is up 3%, a really big move there, and the same in Paris with the CAC 40. Japan was also really strong. Looking at the 60-minute chart there, the daily chart, nudging new highs in Japan. So that is, Asia has really risen on this. Even China, which has been fairly subdued, up 1.6%. The Sensex in India, which has had a pretty torrid time for most of this year, with a downside target still below the cloud, but it was up over 1%. And the Aussie market up 1.25%, waiting to see if we can activate that upside target, looking at the 60-minute chart. Upside target given and met, so that's quite cool. We talked about Brent crude. I mean, the key thing about the oil chart as well is these upside targets are now disappearing off the chart, and we've got downside targets now showing their WTI. We are back below the cloud. Expect what was previously resistance to ultimately become support if this Middle East crisis does get solved longer term. Good news for US consumers. This is the RBOB gasoline chart, the gas at the petrol pump, and we're seeing that moving lower. And so that is going to be politically popular in the US. We're seeing that has been as high as 390, back to 325. So that is a really big move back in favor of US petrol pump prices. Looking at sugar, that continues to be weak. Multiple downside targets there on the short-term chart, on the 60-minute, the daily chart. We're waiting to see if we activate a new downside target, and the weekly on sugar still looks really grim below the cloud, so really quite interesting there. And if we look at gold, we're seeing gold up 2% this morning. That has reacted quite positively to the news. There is a support level there at around 4,000. And if we look at the 60-minute chart, we can see we're back above the clouds, so short-term better for gold. And silver also short-term better, and upside targets there as well. Looking at the tech stocks, of course, this is still the dominant stocks in the US. Apple up, they were down 1.5% on Friday, not looking so strong. And we have got potentially a downside target to be activated there, so that's got to be monitored. Amazon were also lower. Google actually were up, so that was a bit better news. And Microsoft were fairly flat as well. Tesla, a sister company to SpaceX, if you like, they were up a bit more strongly on Friday. And if we look at the 60-minute chart, we do have some new upside targets, but we have been below the cloud for Tesla, just like the Nasdaq, really. So we do need to keep an eye on that. And Nvidia, as I mentioned, they were fairly flat. We do have downside targets, failure to make a new high there on the 60-minute chart, and that is below the cloud. So the picture is quite mixed, and we've got a downside target on the daily. Looking at the Dow, the constituents, Goldman Sachs was looking very strong on Friday, up 2.6%, meeting that upside target, nudging new highs. JP Morgan was another one, American Express. So we saw finance stocks up quite strongly. As you might expect, we were just seeing Caterpillar still looking pretty strong. Chevron were up, ironically, given the oil price move, but they are moving back below the cloud with downside targets. Really interesting to note that Chevron ran all the way up to the crisis in the Middle East. For the first month, they ran higher, but then the price has fallen away. So they have really discounted an ongoing crisis. Now looking at the UK market, last of all, in fact, just a quick look at the Nasdaq. Best performer was ARM, up 11%. Big pullback there from 427 to 298, $130 pullback, but looking strong there. Looking at the UK market, really quite interesting. If we look at here, we're seeing a lot of strong performances. We go only a handful of stocks falling, as you might expect. BP, Shell really is only about 7 stocks lower today, but on the upside, some really big moves. Again, we're seeing banking, Barclays, NatWest, Antofagasta, another great chart with upside targets. Keep an eye on these price targets, and of course today it's going to be all eyes on this SpaceX chart, so keep an eye on that too. Until tomorrow, have a great day. Happy charting. Bye for now.